May I present Lama Su, Prime Minister of Kamino. And this is Master Jedi
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I trust you're going to enjoy your stay. Please. And now to business. You will be delighted to hear that we are on schedule. 200,000 units are ready, with 1 million more well on the way.
That's good news.
Please tell your master, Cypher DS, that his order will be met on time.
I'm sorry, Master...
Jedi Master Cypher Diaz is still a leading member of the Jedi Council, is he not?
Master Cypher Diaz was killed almost 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. But I'm sure he would have been proud of the army we've built for him.
The army?
Yes, a clone army, and I must say, one of the finest we've ever created.
Tell me, Prime Minister, when my master first contacted you about the army, did he say who it was for?
Of course he did. This army is for the Republic. But you must be anxious to inspect the units for yourself.
That's why I'm here.
Masters and Padawans to episode 597 of Full of Sith. It's me, Bryan Young, reporting in with another special episode, recording from Atlanta Comic Convention. And we have another special episode. This one was a lot of fun. This episode, it's called That's Not a Star Wars Plot Hole. And myself and Holly got together with Jason Frey and Alex and Mollie Damon from Star Wars Explained to explain why that's not a Star Wars plot hole. We got in front of an audience and entertained their questions about what they thought might have been Star Wars plot holes and sort of explained why they're not, using the canon and explanations from various things to really explain all that stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, so why don't we jump right into it. And as a heads up, Holly and I are going to be doing some stuff together at Dragon Con. So if you want to see us there, we're going to be doing another trailer panel at Dragon Con in Atlanta, Labor Day weekend, if you want to see us there. This weekend, I'm going to be doing a live Battletech signing and gaming session with Michael Stackpole, who wrote the X-Wing books, and there's still tickets available for that in Salt Lake City, if you want to check that out. And next week I'll be in Houston, playing a Star Wars role-playing game at BrawlCon, if you want to check that out. I believe there's still tickets to that game, if you're in that area. And the week after that, between DragonCon and BrawlCon, myself, I'll be doing a writing panel at the Writer's Digest Science Fiction and Fantasy Virtual Convention that's being headlined by Mike Chen, who wrote Star Wars Brotherhood. So lots of cool stuff over the next few weeks if you want to do some stuff. But without further ado, here is That's Not a Star Wars Plot Hole.
Welcome everyone to That's Not a Star Wars Plot Hole. I'm Bryan Young. I'm a Star Wars nerd and occasionally recognized as a Star Wars expert. I've written for StarWars.com, Star Wars Insider, and write for various Star Wars things and websites, and I really love Star Wars and examine it from every different angle possible, and as I said, I really like it. And we're going to be doing this panel today with this illustrious crew of people who are also renowned Star Wars experts, and if they would like to introduce themselves, starting with Alex here to my right, and we'll just move down the line and I'll explain how today is going to work.
My name is Alex Damon, and I run a YouTube channel called Star Wars Explained with my wife, where we do basically this, and we answer a lot of questions about trying to rationalize, like, this is a weird thing in Star Wars, and how does this work? And yeah, we've taken all of the movies and the video games and books and comics, and we try to make it all one cohesive thing.
What he said. But yes, I am the co-host, and we do book reviews, comics, weekly podcast, a lot of Star Wars talk.
I'm Holly Frey, co-host of the Full of Sith podcast with Bryan. I have, but not in a while, written for StarWars.com and occasionally help ILM promoting immersive content that they're working on. That's probably the germane stuff.
I'm Jason Frey. I've written a whole ton of Star Wars novels and short stories, so I create the problems that Alex and Mollie get to explain away.
Or you help fix them.
I think, yeah, you help answer them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times that I reference the Last Jedi novelization.
Oh, bless you, too kind.
So basically what we want to do is, the idea of this is sometimes people think that there are plot holes. And sometimes, they think that plot holes are things that are plot holes are not actually plot holes. They are inconsistencies or things that are things other than plot holes. So we can explain the differences between those. So we want to hear what you think those things are, those things that are confusing in Star Wars to you, or things that you think might be plot holes, and we will help explain those for you, or explain where other parts of canon might be able to help clear those issues up for you. And I literally can't think of a better group to help do that than this August crowd. And the other aspect to this is that Jason Frey has brought one of his books and will give the person with the best question a copy of one of these books for you.
Because I'm doing that, I get to put out a clarification that the other panelists can rebuke me on. But this panel that's not a Star Wars thing I don't like. So, things you don't like, that's a whole different panel. But plot holes, et cetera, we're all over it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a different thing. Like, things you don't like, I mean, I don't want to hear about, like, somehow Palpatine returned. Like, sure, you can not like that line, but that's not a plot hole. And I guess that's kind of my point, the idea that a plot hole is something where, like, if you saw, the Millennium Falcon get destroyed in the, on its escape from Docking Bay 94, and then it appears 4 scenes later, and it's not destroyed, that would be a plot hole, right? Without any explanation of how it came back. But, that's not necessarily what it is. So, does anybody want to start us off? Who has an idea for a plot hole? So why don't we start here, and then we'll move back.
Hi.
So to repeat the question, where are the rules of, like, force choking? What are the limits there? Like, Count Dooku was seen in Revenge of the Sith force choking Obi-Wan and tossing him away during their lightsaber battle. Is there a limit to that? Is there, could someone just do that every time? Who wants to take this?
I can start. So I have 2 things. The first one is not strictly canon. This was established in Legends. The Darth Bane trilogy talked about combat, and that one of the first things Force users learn is to kind of put a shield up, so that you have to basically break through their Force shield to then attack them with the Force. I don't know that that's strictly something that you could say is canon anymore. So what I would also say is that using the Force is not just like a simple snap decision of, and now I'm going to Force choke you, or like Obi-Wan saying, no, I'm going to Force speed run down this hallway to catch up to Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. when you're in battle, you're concentrating on so many things, and using the Force is something that takes a great deal of focus and concentration. So I would say it's like crazy impressive that Dooku could be a great duelist and then have enough focus to choke Obi-Wan. But yeah, I think a lot of those, like, well, why didn't they just do this with the Force during that fight, comes down to it's not that simple to just like, I don't scream out. It's not scream out spells in Harry Potter to be like, I can't remember, Expelliarmus or whatever. You're also having to focus on what you're doing, and you're focusing on staying alive.
I think also remember the Empire Strikes Back line. Yoda says the Force is for knowledge and defense, never for attack. Which I always thought as a kid he said knowledge and events. It took me years to be like, oh wait, that would make much more sense. But anyway, I mean, the point being like, using the Force, a Jedi has to be kind of calm, passive, kind of letting the Force direct them, etc. And that's a much stronger thing than using it to attack and disrupting things. Now, why does that happen to Obi-Wan? Well, I mean, Obi-Wan is in a whole lot of stress. His kind of connection to the Force has lapsed a bit, and and Dooku takes a moment of weakness. But most of the time, like, a Jedi would be like, I'm one with the Force, like, take that somewhere else.
I think, too, right, the Force isn't the same for everybody. I mean, one of the great things that I love about the High Republic books is that it really shares how the Force talks to different Force sensitives in different ways. Like Avar Kriss, she hears the Force as music. And so I also liken it to, like, athletes, right? A marathon runner and a sprinter are both incredible athletes, but they function in their athleticism in different ways. And so I think the Force manifests in different abilities in terms of combat, as well as there are a million different training styles that any of them could have been using and training in. So some of it just comes down to each individual Force user has a different set of tools and strengths, and so they can't just all walk around like this all the time trying to hit everybody they don't like. Although, man, doesn't that sound really satisfying?
It reminds me of, I mean, if you've seen The Mandalorian, you've seen Grogu use the Force, and he's still, a child, but he gets tuckered out after using it, and he can't, he needs to take a little nap, so that still happens to everybody else, but maybe not quite as cute.
I think that was actually something in Mike Chen's novel Brotherhood, that he kind of addressed the Obi-Wan Force speed thing, where Obi-Wan has a thought where he's like, I could rush down the hall, but then that will kind of like tire me out for the fight to come. So there's a balance of trying to use the Force, but also stay in the moment and not get to the point where you have to take a nap.
I think the other thing in that fight specifically that a lot of people underestimate or even forget about is that there's a second Sith Lord in that room that can be manipulating things, whether with the Force covertly, or adding his power to Dooku's, or distracting things, or using the Force in ways that are completely secret and hidden, right? So like Darth Sidious is just sitting there doing who knows what with the Force, right? So like Dooku could have any amount of extra power or be held back because of that in ways that we might not know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, sequel trilogy after the Hosnian Prime incident, we really don't see the government again. We don't see a military presence that is directly from the government, and we really don't see any politics. And power is kind of always grabbed, and always grabbed really quickly. Why do we think we don't see them again by episode 9? And what do we think is set up as the immediate government the day episode 9 is over? So not really getting into the new Rey trilogy yet, but just what is happening at the end of episode 9 government-wise?
Well, we didn't see the government after the destruction of Hosnian Prime because the government was on Hosnian Prime. So like they, and all the books established that the New Republic really went out of its way to try to disarm as much as possible to prove that they weren't a threat like the Empire. So and the fact that Starkiller Base killed all the systems and the New Republic fleet in that attack really robbed them of their ability to scramble anything, which is why the Resistance was so important, and which is why their flight to Crate was so desperate, and why Poe Dameron's childish mission didn't help them very much. And then the First Order took over, right? Like that era that era is really called like the rise of the First Order. They take over and oppress people the way the Empire did in that year, right? And they're the ones who are in control now, which is why the Resistance is hiding on Agent Kloss. What I expect happens is that the Resistance starts rebuilding a government with the pieces that are left over, and they create a new republic, a renewed republic or something. I don't know. Anybody want to take that one?
Well, there's a great couple of pages in the Rise of Skywalker comic adaptation that shows Lando putting out this message to kind of like inspire everyone to get together and fight, and you kind of see these little vignettes of like who's left. But I mean, for the most part, I think we see in the movies who's left for the military, I guess.
Go ahead.
I was thinking of Star Wars Resistance does show Hamato Ziono, if he's in Ahsoka, as like the jerk senator, but he survived. And then we have the novel Resistance Reborn that gets into some of the survivors, but also how the First Order like immediately was like, we're going after any members of the government that made it off of Hosnian Prime or weren't there. So I think that there's potential for more exploration there, but I think there's enough to say that the First Order just really made that a priority. As for what happens after Episode 9, I'm like, I don't know. We do joke about the new Republic all the time, but I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Yeah, I mean, it's important to remember, right, Princess Leia's resistance is not a sanctioned military action. She's kind of like, they're kind of letting her do it because she's General Leia, but nobody really wanted that. So at that point, what you have is a band of upstarts who were not supposed to be doing what they were doing. And then I imagine the fallout of that after 9 is like everybody going, well, you weren't really official. Should any of you have a say in this? Like, I think there's a lot of bickering the following day. Yeah.
But you do also have the support of, governments are built by the consent of the governed, and the citizens' fleet is the governed, right? So you've got a whole bunch of people supporting them now, where they didn't during the conflict on Dakar and with Starkiller Base. And it was Luke's sacrifice that started that spark of rebellion again. So we'll start seeing that again, hopefully.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great.
Jason, did you want to comment on that at all? Okay. We'll go here and then there. Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure like this is a plot hole, but I've seen Attack of the Clones and I've seen season 6 of the Clone Wars, and the whole like clone army, Cypher Diaz, Palpatine thing, like it doesn't make sense.
I agree. It doesn't make a bit of sense.
Yeah, you're right. We were just discussing this the other night.
It's a lot. Like, that is one of the things that I would love to get a Sifo Dyas novel. Every time he pops up, I'm like, yes, thank you. The Darth Plagueis novel by James Luceno is Legends, but I think it's a great read if you're curious about some of the more baffling questions about the prequels. But it sounds like Sifo Dyas had a vision of war in the future, and he went to the Jedi Council and was like, we need to make an army. And they said, no, and you're warmongering, and they removed him from the council. So he went, made a clone army, and almost immediately Dooku and Sidious had him killed and just took it. And I think the Kaminoans were under the impression that they were making an army for the Jedi. It seems like Lama Su, and some of them knew there was more to it, and they were like, we got to keep this hush-hush. But yeah, it's like a really convoluted story where I don't think it had to be that convoluted.
I mean, you're dealing with Sidious, who, you know, his opening bid publicly to destroy the Jedi was the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems. So, like, convoluted is kind of his middle name.
Yeah, his weapon is obfuscation.
But I do think that's generally the right of it, right? Master Sifo-Dyas had these visions, which is, when you think about it, exactly the way Sidious manipulated Anakin, right? Sidious sort of put in motion these convoluted plans around Anakin to make him feel like his wife was going to die, and then put in motion or forced Anakin into these decisions, ideas that made him act on those to make those things happen for him to act in the way Sidious could force him to act. So Sifo-Dyas became a pawn of the Sith, which is why the clone template was recruited by a man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan, right? So Sidious was managing this whole thing from the beginning. And so when the, Sifo-Dyas did go to the Kaminoans, or Sifo-Dyas didn't go to the Kaminoans, whether he did or not, all Sidious needed to do was have Sifo-Dyas go to the Jedi Council and say, we're going to have this catastrophe, and the Jedi and the Republic are going to need an army, and we need to raise it. And the Jedi needed to say, you, sir, have lost your mind, please leave. And they sent him on missions, and Tyrannus got rid of him. And they got rid of him when they needed to get rid of him in a way that was very mysterious, and they couldn't find him, right? And that's a loose end that Dooku has to wrap up. We see in, that was the Lost episodes, the Netflix episodes of Clone Wars in season 6. And so Sidious or Dooku, pretending to be Sifo-Dyas, one of the two of them goes to Kamino, says Sifo-Dyas orders this clone army. Dooku and Sidious are the only two with the money and the capital to raise to pay for it. They recruit Jango to do it. And so when the Jedi show up and say, Sifo-Dyas ordered this apparently and paid for it in full, like, what do we do with this? And they're like, well, we need it, and we kicked him out because we didn't think we did, but we do kind of need it right now. Maybe Sifo-Dyas was right. Good. I don't like this, but we should use it because we need it. We kind of have to, right? So let's use it, right? So it is one of those convoluted wheels within wheels plans of Sidious's, and Sidious was able to manage it at every turn like he wanted to, using Dooku as Sifo-Dyas or whatever pass-through he needed as Sifo-Dyas. Probably Dooku, because he used Dooku as Tyrannus, to hire Jango. But that's kind of how that all worked. And you can see that across Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, Clone Wars, and the Tales of the Jedi with Dooku. You can see that in the Master and Apprentice book. You can see that told across Bad Batch. Yes, you can see that. There's other stuff in... there was another thing with the younger Dooku where it had that in it. The Tarkin book. Jim Lucino touched on that in the Tarkin book. Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of sources that you can kind of coalesce together to kind of piece that story together. Does that help that make more sense?
Clear
Jason?
as mud.
That doesn't clear that up for you
No.
at all?
No, it's I'm as always I'm in awe of the everything you can follow, but it still doesn't make a lick of sense. How did they pay for it?
Dooku
Enough
was
money for a
pretty rich,
galactic
right?
army just showed up, or did the Kamen was he like, we'll pay you later, and the Kaminoans were like, okay, that's
Come
cool.
on, Dooku's a trust fund baby.
Yeah.
Dooku has the entire wealth of Sereno behind him.
Yeah.
And
That's enough for a galactic army?
and Sidious
fund
doing
baby.
his thing.
I will say, I'm doing what I promised I wouldn't do, but I will say though that while I still don't think that makes a lick of sense, like I think the Sifo-Dyas story, which really came later, is really nice work. I mean, it's he can see what's going to happen and tries to stop it, and that's a kind of time-honored storytelling tradition. And I think it's really neat. I think it's really nicely done, and I really do enjoy that part.
Like, especially in Star Wars, so many things, like in Attack of the Clones, it does feel unnecessarily convoluted, but then getting into the Clone Wars and all the surrounding material, you're like, oh, there's a chance to make a cooler story out of it and to smooth things out. And yeah, it's a lot to take in, but like, I think Bryan did a good job explaining, how it all went down.
Yeah, that's why it's important to, I mean, if you're curious about that stuff, watch the Clone Wars, because you're right, it does fill in a lot of questions and gaps and stuff.
We need a Sifo-Dyas flowchart.
Yeah.
Like, that'll, like, if we could all have the visual, it would clear
Charlie
up a
Day,
lot.
like, red twine.
100%.
Was it Charlie from Always Sunny?
Yeah.
Then you had one. Yes.
It's kind of a bit of a two-part. It deals with the Star Wars. So we've seen Attack of the Clones. Papa Lesser gives, I think, Dooku the Death Star plans.
Yeah.
And in New Hope, it's the different design where it's like a made of dots. Basically, it shows the focusing disc little dish around the equator rather than where it is in reality. And so that's a weird plot point, I would say. But the other part is, how did they power the second Death Star after they blew up the first one and lost all the power crystals?
There's an untold story of some other Gorman out there.
Yeah, we talked about this recently after watching Andor, and thought that maybe just the amount of resources that they had gathered for the first Death Star, they probably had some left over.
So if you look at what they were strip mining from Jedha kyber crystal wise, they were still strip mining kyber crystals when they test fired on Jedha, right?
Yeah.
Like those Star Destroyers that were collecting all the kyber from Jedha were still collecting them and then bailing when the Death Star arrived to show up to destroy the Holy City, right? So it's like, if that's one place that they were doing that, plus they were already strip mining Ilum at the same time. So my guess is they probably had a huge stockpile, if nothing else, because Sidious was probably hedging his bets to make sure no one else could make a super weapon.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing to remember, right, is that the kyber crystal powers the super laser. Do you think they only planned to fire it once? Like, they wanted to have plenty on hand. That's like a fuel resource that they would have very carefully amassed so that they could go around and destroy multiple planets.
And there's a really cool arc of the 2015 Star Wars comic run where the Empire goes back to Jedha, and because they didn't fully destroy it, but it's all cracked and messed up and falling apart, and they go back and they just keep taking more kybers. So Jedha wasn't the only planet they were mining kyber from. Yeah, Ilum, we mentioned. I think Lothal is talked about in your books, I think. I believe they
Oh, cool.
I think they talk. I think you talk about kyber crystals being on Lothal.
Oh, in the Servants of the
Did you
Empire
write
books.
that in the
Yeah.
fugue state?
And as far as the plans changing, I know that there were a number of different versions of the plans, and I know that Poggle, even though they'd given the original plans from Dooku, after the Second Battle of Geonosis, this is in Jim Lucino's book Catalyst. After the Second Battle of Geonosis in the Clone Wars, Poggle the Lesser is captured as a prisoner of war. In Catalyst, Krennic puts Poggle the Lesser to work trying to get all of the drones of Geonosis to work on building the initial infrastructure and equator of the Death Star. And there's more design iterations there. And the Citadel Archive, they say in Rogue One, has all of the iterations of the plans. So those data tapes might have multiple versions of those plans. And the one we saw on the screen in A New Hope, they couldn't show us all of the plans. That's a lot of files that data tape probably has. They just showed us the one that was most expedient for the time in 1977.
One thing I love, just talking about the scale of this, like I love the scene in Andor when they're bringing Cassian down to the Narkina, is it, the prison planet?
Yeah.
And you see all the other prisons. and like, which we never hear about, but, you know, they're making, you know, Death Star widgets. They're probably making them in all those other prisons, and that's just one planet. So I thought that was just a really nice touch that lets you think about the exponential scale, and then, you know, and then a second Death Star.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it goes even further when you think about the Final Order and The Rise of Skywalker. All of those ships have planet-killing lasers on them.
Does that answer your question?
I would say more or less, but at the same time, I just thought with engineering, it's a very exact science, so it would not make sense to have multiple versions. Like have the one that Hoggle had, which was almost the final product, versus the one in A New Hope, which is the one.
Well, Poggle was also doing malicious compliance, and the equator that they built, he also had his drones destroy to cover his escape. So he was also just screwing with them.
I do think when you said that, I was like, huh. Immediately, I was like, I don't think I have a good answer for that. That's just one of those things where I was like, yeah, that's what they had in '77, and like, you know what?
It would be confusing to say, here's the Death Star, here's where it should be. When they get there, it's like, where the fuck is it?
Yeah.
I just told Jason that the building inspector didn't approve it in its placement, and they had to move it at the last minute.
Yeah. The feng shui.
Anybody
was
who
off.
you have done construction on your house, I know from that laugh.
R2 just didn't have the resolution for the right plans.
Yeah.
Let's go over here, and then up there, and then if nobody else has one, we'll come back to you.
So in Clone Wars, Yoda had visions of Order 66, and then didn't do anything about it?
Always in motion is the future. He doesn't know that's really going to happen. It's a possibility.
And Yoda's advice to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith is that he needs to learn to let go of the things he's afraid to lose.
I think there would have been a chance that if Yoda had he does have the vision, and then if he just struggles to control and do everything that Anakin does, like Yoda also has a vision of himself, the dark version of himself that he has to learn to like absorb. So like, who's to say if he was like, I have to do something about this and I'm going to control the future and I can fix it, he might have become that dark version of himself. I don't think that, or he could have even caused Order 66 in another way. Like, I don't think there was any stopping it.
Yeah, when you compare it to Anakin, it's very similar. Like, Anakin was so obsessed with saving his wife because he thought she would die. He didn't know for sure, but that is what led him down a darker path.
Did you have something, Jason? Oh, you were leaning toward the mic like you did.
No, I think that's exactly it. Like, I mean, a really interesting point in Star Wars is always, you know, and in all storytelling is you try to stop the thing you've seen and you bring it about. And yeah, as Mollie said, you know, it's right there with Anakin and other places too.
Does that answer it for you? Okay, cool. And then we had up here.
So, thinking about the kyber crystals as like a power source, would any of the Jedi, the lightsabers, have like run out of power in the middle of any of their battles? Like, oh, like my kyber crystal went out. And if it's like an extended power run, what happened to all the lightsabers after Order 66? Were they just laying around with power? People just pick them up and use them, or how did that work?
I love that one.
There's some stories about what happened. The Empire actually collected all the sabers afterward. They burned a whole bunch of them. There was a huge ceremony where Mas Amedda had a burning of lightsabers and made a big show of Master Yoda's saber that they'd captured and destroying that. There was also, they took a lot of the crystals and actually gave them to Galen Erso to experiment on, to do his experiments, which he thought he was working on a power project. For free, clean energy for the galaxy, not the Death Star's super laser. So that was what happened with most of the Jedi lightsabers after Order 66.
I remember, as far as them running out of power, I don't know if this is what happened, but I remember in Star Wars Rebels, they go to Malachor, and Ezra powers up an old ancient lightsaber, and then it fizzles out. So I guess there is potential that a kyber crystal could lose power. Maybe it's like if you're separated from the maker of the lightsaber or something. I feel like kyber crystals should last indefinitely, but if they're disconnected from the Force and just like left on a dead and dying planet for thousands of years, then maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Warranty is toast.
There's a lot of little bits and pieces inside of a lightsaber. If you ever look at like the visual dictionaries, there's like an emitter, there's a focusing lens, there's like all these little pieces. So there's a lot of potential for those things to get out of line, or the lightsaber or the crystal could crack. I think we see Ezra trying to make his lightsaber, or like somebody in one of the shows is trying to make a lightsaber and it doesn't turn on all the way because he didn't make it right. So there's a lot of
That
bits
was one of the kids in the gathering.
Yeah. In the Clone
Yeah, I really
Wars.
love that episode.
It's so sweet.
Because it brings back to the, as they're saying, the relationship between the wielder and the Force, and yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a big part of it, right? We have so much lore around how the Jedi connect to their crystal, how they go find them. It calls to them. It's something that they have, like the Force is flowing between them and it, versus the way that the Empire is using it is like just blunt force trauma. It's not about any kind of connection that could potentially sustain the power or the giving force of it. They're just using it up.
I would say one thing too is that one thing we have learned is that through the story reel Utapau Crystal Crisis arc and the arc of Rebels, that Saw Gerrera and Ezra and Sabine destroy that other giant kyber crystal. I don't think the kyber crystals necessarily create energy. I think they're pass-throughs to magnify energy.
Yeah.
Right? So a small amount of energy focused through the crystal magnifies the energy exponentially. So a very, very small amount of energy as a battery would go a very long way through a kyber crystal for a very long time, which is why Galen Erso was so interested in them to create free, infinite power for everyone as a power source, or a piece of a power source.
I wanted to say that this question reminded me of just the way Star Wars storytelling happens, because in the Darth Vader comics, we see Mas Amedda burn Yoda's lightsaber, but then in the Book of Boba Fett, Luke offers Yoda's lightsaber to Grogu, and then that had to have Charles Soule, who originally wrote the Darth Vader comic, write that, that one of Yoda's lightsabers was destroyed. Like, so, okay, now Yoda had two lightsabers lying around, and that stuff happens all the time.
And that's how we learned Yoda was a hoarder.
Yeah.
Could it have been the lightsaber that he handed to one of the kids in Young Jedi Adventures?
Yeah.
It could be.
That would have been
Kai's
cool.
the one Kai
Yeah,
used.
Kai's second lightsaber. Young Jedi Adventures is so good. We'll go here and then here, and we'll come back down to you. Yes, sir.
So the events of the Acolyte,
Mm-hmm.
I guess Yoda and presumably the council knew about the events, presumably. So they went years without investigating or mentioning or even talking about it. It never came up again.
That's why we need season 2.
I know.
Yeah.
We really need season 2.
So, did they know about the events? We don't know exactly what Vernestra Rwoh told Yoda, other than we know Vernestra's official story is Saul was responsible for all of it. And if that's what she told Yoda, what's there to investigate? Saul's dead. Case closed.
Yeah, there are some hints in the story that, if we were going to get a season 2, we might find out more about Vernestra's possible connections to Chimere. What's, she's got that lightsaber whip. What's the scar on his back? Is there a connection there? So there's probably, there could be something there that she doesn't want to share.
We know that Yoda knows about the rule of 2 somehow. He tells Mace, like, always 2 there are. And I think we could reconcile that as just, in general, Sith have a master and someone who craves the master's power. Like, that, they kind of operated that way even before Darth Bane made the capital rule of 2. But I think that if you read the High Republic, there's a point where the Jedi learn about these creatures that can kill them, and it's very scary for them, and they decide, let's not tell anyone about this. And then 150 years later, it becomes a big problem. And Yoda is part of the group that knows about it and says, let's just keep this under wraps right now. So I do think there's a possibility that Vernestra tells Yoda, like, hey, we need to talk. Someone's running around, and no one that is still alive heard Chimere say, you might call me a Sith. So they don't know for sure it's a Sith, but someone's running around with a red lightsaber, causing problems. I think it's fair to say Yoda might know about that. And then maybe they hunt Chimere down, deal with it, and they're like, okay, problem solved. No need to tell anyone about this. We fixed it, when they didn't really.
Especially if Chimere's Vernestra's former apprentice. She could go to Yoda and say, my former apprentice, who we thought was dead, has appeared alive, and we kind of need to deal with this. And you know how much of a problem that situation was. We should really keep this on the down low. And Yoda says, okay, this is a personal issue, go ahead and take care of it, right? Like, so there's ways that whole situation could be very easily kept quiet and out of everybody else, especially with the political ramifications of the Jedi being implicated in that as a huge problem, especially when you think about the Acolyte as an opening move toward the Jedi becoming more politicized toward their march to doom because of the machinations of the Sith, from Plagueis and the Grand Plan down to Palpatine and Order 66 and the Jedi Purge, right? So like this is the Jedi and the first steps toward them compromising their morals toward their death.
Don't we also get a sense in the Wayseeker novel that just came out that Vernestra is a little bit on the struggle bus about her relationship to the Jedi Order and like what she does and does not put in reports, which is ironic because she's also mad that they weren't telling everybody that there was a way that Jedi could be killed. But she mentions several times in that novel, some of it's told by her from her point of view, that like she doesn't put everything in the reports because she doesn't. It's not all important for the Jedi Order to know everything she's doing out in the galaxy and her Wayseeker missions. So it sets up an interesting kind of moral morass for her where she maybe isn't always truthful even as she's holding the Jedi Order to a standard of higher truthfulness that is just like a really interesting character point.
Yeah, it's a fun book. If you haven't read it, pick it up. I really enjoyed it.
Yes.
So we see in the original trilogy that Luke's whole thing is trying to redeem his father because he sees the good in him. So how come we see in the sequels that as soon as he gets a bad dream about Kylo, he shoots him too?
Well, he considers it, but that's not his like plan necessarily.
Yeah, he doesn't try to kill him.
So
I mean, like if you believe Kylo's version
Right.
of those events, but we see 3 versions of those events. So if you believe Kylo, sure, but I don't know why you'd believe Kylo.
I think that maybe the movie could have done something kind of like when Rey touches the lightsaber in The Force Awakens and we see her vision. I think it would have been interesting if we saw Luke's vision. You can hear it. You hear screams and death and suffering, and he ignites the lightsaber. They maybe could have shown Luke having a vision and what he was seeing, and in the vision he pulls his lightsaber out and ignites it, and it cuts back to where he really is, and he's like, oh crap, like that's what was happening, is that he wasn't, I don't think he was in his right mind. He was afraid and he wanted to stop what was happening. He wanted to control the future. And so in that moment of weakness, as he says, he makes a horrible mistake. He did not have his lightsaber up. He was not ready to kill his nephew. He made a horrible mistake that can't be undone. But yeah, from Kylo's perspective, he's like, Luke was about to chop my head off. So yeah, I don't see it as Luke thinking there was no good in Ben. It was just that his impulses got the better of him.
I'm curious, Jason, as the person who novelized The Last Jedi, in your view, did Luke try to kill Kylo Ren?
No, and this is, I love The Last Jedi. I feel very lucky I got to novelize it, but it's my one quarrel with the movie is I think, and part of this is because I think Mark Hamill's performance, worked out with Ryan is so strong that I think that, showing him even in the kind of neutral version, showing him igniting the lightsaber, I think it wasn't necessary. I think it threw a lot of people off. I think Hamill's performance was so good, you could have seen him just touch it, and you could have gotten what he was worried about, et cetera, without that, kind of gesture that was so big that it kind of overshadowed a lot of stuff.
Even if he were in the hut without igniting it, but he's holding it and Ben wakes up to that, that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, Hamill does so many great things in that movie, and you could have seen it just in his eyes and his face.
Yeah.
And I think he got it.
I think Pablo Hidalgo tweeted this, I really liked it, that Luke's problem in that moment was that he brought the lightsaber with him at all. It's a mirror of the dark side cave when he goes and Yoda's like, you don't need your weapons. And Luke's like, I might. And the fact that he's bringing his weapons into the cave or into the hut kind of means that he's looking for a fight in a sense, or that he's like, I might need it. Like, I don't know what Ben's going to do in there. It's like you're not even giving him a chance.
It wasn't just, the other thing I would take issue with is the characterization that he just had a dream. If you remember what Luke said, he said that he'd seen darkness in him through his training. And so this was a long, sustained thing that he'd witnessed with Ben over a long course of time. And that the reason he went in to check on him in the night in the first place was because of this evil that he had sensed over a long period of time. And then he didn't just see a dream, he checked into the Force to see the future. And you're a Skywalker, and your thing is kind of seeing the future, right? And so Luke, you got to think about Empire Strikes Back, right? He saw Cloud City and Han getting tortured before Han and Leia even got to Cloud City, right? Watch Empire again, and when he says, I see a city in the clouds, remember that scene happens before we even get to Bespin in the movie, right? So it's like we can rely on Luke knowing that when he sees the future, he's probably actually seeing the future. So we can trust that. And in Return of the Jedi, when he sees, when Vader says, I'll turn your sister to the dark side, and he goes bananas and tries to strike out against Vader and attacks him and lets the dark side in and hacks at him over and over and over again until he cuts his hand off. And the only thing that stays his hand, with the same look on his face that he looks down at Kylo with, is the fact that his own robotic hand resembles Vader's. It took him that long to come to the same realization he does in a split second in Ben's hut that he'd made a mistake.
And I do think that's an important thing. A lot of people will say, like, Luke saw the good in Vader and thought he could be redeemed, but then don't talk about that part where in the same movie later, he is trying to kill Vader and barely stops himself.
I will say this, not to argue with Jason because I love him, but Luke igniting the saber does not bother me one bit, and I will tell you why. And I'm going to nerd out a little bit hard and invoke William Blake, who is a writer, an English writer from many, many moons ago. But he had this idea that true good could only happen. You could only be a truly good person if you had been truly tempted by evil. And so for me, that makes that moment with Luke actually really poignant, where he is very close to doing something foolish, but he pulls himself back from the brink. And that is how powerful the good in him is, that he doesn't follow through on the flow that would be very easy and comfortable to go forward and do this bad thing. But also it's worth remembering that whole thing scared him bad enough that he was like, I'm out of here. I got to clearly go work on myself. I mean, it kind of the stakes have to be super high for that. So that's why it never bugged me a bit.
And doubly so for Rey. Rey could not understand how someone could stand over someone with a lightsaber ignited with no intention to kill them until she was standing over Luke with her lightsaber ignited with no intention to kill him when she's asking him to tell her the honest version of the story. right? And then she realizes as she's looking down with the saber ignited over Luke with no intention to kill him, like, oh, I'm doing the same thing. I need to stop, right? It's just a really beautiful moment of storytelling across the board. Okay, this is going to be our last one. I'm sorry, we can talk to you after. You got yours.
I'm sorry to bring this back to the very complicated origins of the Clone Army.
No, you're good.
But I feel like I have an understanding of the whole Dooku-Sifo-Dyas situation until we get to season 6 of the Clone Wars, and I don't understand what Valorum's aide, Silman, and the Pikes have to do with all of this, and why those stories run together. And I guess this isn't really a plot hole, it's just not explained very clearly.
It was just that Sifo-Dyas had gone on a mission to them, and they were working, the Pikes and Dooku were working together on something, and that mission with Silman and Sifo-Dyas that they'd gone on together was part of the luring that Dooku had used to assassinate him. And the reason Dooku was so mad about that is because Silman, who was supposed to have died in the assassination attempt, lived. And so he could tell the Jedi that Sifo-Dyas hadn't ordered the clone army and things hadn't worked out. So he was this close to revealing all the secrets that the clone army had actually been programmed by the Sith and were going to annihilate everyone, and that's why. The Pikes didn't have anything to do with it. They just happened to be the place that everything got lured, or that Sifo-Dyas and Silman got lured to. And Silman could have been anybody. It was just convenient that he happened to be Valorum's aide, just to be a convenient tool to show us that this had happened prior to Palpatine being Chancellor.
We just hatched the idea over here that the clones were actually financed by drug money from the Pikes.
That could
Doesn't
be.
that make it really sinister?
It's already super dark, but
that
oh boy.
that wouldn't surprise me, honestly,
Yeah.
because if you look at everything Maul does when he comes back around in the Clone Wars, he kind of basically does a junior version of everything Sidious taught him to do, right? It's like, I need to be a player in the war. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, I've got to manipulate everything and coalesce my forces, and I'm going to go to the underworld to do that and create the Shadow Collective and do all of this stuff. So if he was around working with Sidious during all of this, and Sidious was going like, hey, Pike Collective, you're going to do this, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Ooh, that makes the clones so dirty. Ooh, I love it.
Okay, I think we're out of time then. So thank you all so much. Hopefully this was enlightening and you learned some things about Star Wars, and we cleared some things up for you. So thank you.
Yeah, that panel was a blast, and I hope you enjoyed it. For more information about me, you can go to swankmatron.com. For Holly, you can find her and all of her stuff at Stuff You Missed in History Class, or use the hashtag Criminalia for her other show. For Jason Frey, you can look him up at Jason C. Frey. And for Star Wars Explained, you can look them up on YouTube and across social media at Star Wars Explained. And for Full of Sith, you can go to fullofsith.com and listen to our entire back catalog of episodes. And we'd really love for you to do that. You can send us an email at holocron@fullofsith.com. And go ahead and rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it. We'd really love that. So for super producer Mike Pilot, for our guests this week, Jason Frey, Alex Damon, Mollie Damon, and for Holly Frey, I'm Bryan Young, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be needing me, I'll close down for a while.